Hey guys, I wanted to do another Mortal Kombat video and do some code review and just kind of show the current progress of where I'm at. I haven't been making a ton of forward progress because I've been spending most of my time lately just doing kind of like code optimization and cleanup. So since the last video, we've implemented audio, gotten the rest of the fighters' animation states pretty much done, and implemented palette swapping. So, the goal for this has always been to get the game to be as close to arcade accurate as possible, improve on the arcade wherever possible, and get the game running at 60 frames a second. The original arcade ran at 54 frames a second. That was the refresh rate on the screen. So that doesn't necessarily mean that this game is going to run 10-ish% faster, because we can tweak some of the animations to get it closer in line to where the arcade was. So I'll go into how that works as well. So just real quick, I was going to play the game where it's at right now. I'm in the process of redoing the how the attacks work, so the basic gameplay, how the opposing fighter reacts to being attacked and damaged, and then the way that certain attacks move, so uppercuts, roundhouse kicks, throws, things like that. The fighter has a base Y position, so when the fighter is just on the floor where they're supposed to be, certain attacks will adjust the Y offset to get you off the ground. Then when you hit the ground, it has to change to a different animation type and make the arena shake. I'm in the process of cleaning that up so it doesn't work currently. So I'll go through and tweak it. There's a couple bugs. I'm pretty sure I know what the bugs are, so we can get them fixed. But I'll show you what it looks like right now, and what I'm trying to do. And then I'll go through the basic game loop as well, and just kind of show how the kind of behind the scenes how the game is working so far. So I'm using the Phoenix debug emulator, which is super handy because it gives you console print output. It's got printf capability. I'm going to skip through this. I'm going to pull in a second fighter just so that it doesn't move. I do have a very, very simplistic CPU AI built in, and basically it just does random button mashing. And I don't want it to do that. I just want a second player that does nothing. So I'm just going to pick this first arena. So what's going to happen is when I go to do one of the attacks that's supposed to lift the other fighter off the ground, it's not going to do what it's supposed to. So a throw, what it's supposed to do, I'll show you. You can see how it initiates Reptile's animation for the throw, but he doesn't actually go up and over Liu Kang and then back the other direction. Same thing with an uppercut. He just goes right to the ground. Roundhouse kick's the same thing. Jump kick, same thing. Just goes right to the ground. So it's bypassing what's supposed to happen, and just going right to the name of the animation when you're on the ground and you kick back up is fall B. So I'm going to back out of this for a second. Hit the stop button to back all the way out. Two-player mode right now is still positioning mode, so I'm going to go into there and show. Oops, wrong one. So I'm going to show the animations that are supposed to happen. So in this mode, if you press the B button, it will animate. The L and the right shift will cycle through the different animations. So I'm just going to go forward until we get to the fall back. Alright, well here's the throw. And it's slow motion. So here's the first animation frame, right? Actually, there's the first animation frame. And then, so the way that I'm going to do the throws is every fighter is going to have the same number of throw frames, and then every opposing fighter is going to have the same number of being thrown frames. And the throw animation is different than a body slam animation, so there's two different animation states. I'm also doing this a little bit different than the arcade, where when the fighter who's doing the throw is in this state right here, the other fighter is show you. Going to start in this animation frame here. So this is a knockback. So if you're hit with a projectile or a kick or something like that where you get knocked backwards, this one here, I'm actually going to use this first frame to be the first frame when you get grabbed during a throw. And then from there, it's going to move on to the rest of the throw animation, which is like that. So if that makes sense, I'm going to go back one more time. So this will be frame 1, and then this will be frame 2, 3, 4, 5. But at this point, you're being thrown, and then because there's a secondary animation taking place that controls only the Y offsets, it handles as soon as the fighter goes up and then comes down and hits the ground, and it knows you've hit the ground because the fighter's Y offset is greater than or equal to the base Y offset. So as soon as it hits that, it triggers the shake animation, and it should also trigger the damage occurring. So with a throw and a body slam, you don't want the damage to happen at the very first frame from the attacking fighter. You want it to happen when the fighter actually hits the ground. So this is the fall back. So this is fall A. And then the next one is fall. So it starts at the same frame, but this is where the fighter kicks back up. So this is what gets triggered when you hit the ground. So whether it's an uppercut or you're up in the air and you get attacked, or a roundhouse kick or a jump kick or whatever, this is the frame, or this is the animation state that you start at. Okay. So I'm going to back out of this. I'm going to show Reptile real quick, because I've already done his thrown animation. Not his throw, but the animation for when he's being thrown by the other fighter. Fight. Oops. Am I lying? I might be lying. Alright, that's fine. So we can actually go through and make that happen on this machine here. So frame 0, again, is supposed to be this frame right here, so that when the fighter who's throwing grabs you, this is what the frame looks like, and then it'll move on to the rest of the animation. So let me back out. And I'm gonna turn this off. We're gonna go back into the code now. And the first thing I want to do is get the when an attack like an uppercut or a roundhouse kick works, the opposing fighter to get launched up into the air. So before I get into the animations and the damage animation and how the fighters react to being damaged and things like that, I was going to go through the game loop real quick. So when the game first initializes, it checks to see if it needs to replay the intro, and if so, it plays the story intro, which is just a bunch of slides. If it has not played the intro once already, then it automatically goes through and it plays the story slides with the backing music. I'll show you what that looks like real quick. So if it hasn't played, it'll go through and play it. Otherwise, when it comes around the horn, if it's going to play again, so after 30 seconds of inactivity, it comes back and it either plays the story intro again based on a random number. So odds are it will play the story again, or it will randomly show, so it's got all the different fighters' bios, then a couple different like ads that you would have seen in arcade machines in the 90s that it'll play instead. Play story slide, just fades to black, swaps the sport background image, and then for a period of time, just displays that sport image on the screen. In every loop, it's always handling the joypad input, and then depending on the state that we're currently in, doing different things with that input. For convenience, I have a struct that I created that keeps track of a bunch of different variables and states and timers and stopwatches and things like that that are also going to be used for the gameplay, special moves and things like that as well. I can get into that after. So the different game mode options basically are none means that you're just hanging out at the basic at the start menu. Options, um, simple enough. You just go into the options menu, and then there's 3 different game modes, which are going to be one player, where you have the you go down the mountain and you follow the battle plan and eventually get to Shao Kahn at the top. 2 player mode is simply that, just 1 player versus 2 player with standard rules. And then in casual mode, there's configurable options where you can turn blood on or off. You can fight against the computer if you want to, change the CPU AI level and things like that. I'll probably add a few more options than what are in there right now. And if anybody has any ideas, I'm happy to take suggestions and get those implemented. It's kind of doing this from scratch. It's fun because we have the ability to kind of tweak this thing and make it how we want. And then there's the arena tour mode as well, which basically just it lets you go through and view the animated arenas, and it'll play the music that belongs to those arenas as well. When you choose the mode that you want, it plays the corresponding audio sample. And then while it's playing, in order to prevent pops or static or things like that, I'm always waiting for the sample to finish before it unloads the sample, which does a quick unload. So that happens in this logic right here, animate start menu, which also handles doing palette swapping on wherever the selected option is. So back and forth, it'll toggle between whatever the basic color is and whatever the selected color is. And then when it's done, it checks to see if there's any active samples still playing. And if they are, it waits and comes back around the horn again. Otherwise, when it finishes, we move on. So we're going to fade out the music that was playing in the start menu. And the fade has to have, just like the background music runs in one thread, the fader thread happens in another thread. And then when it finishes fading, so this function here is doing a wait on the other thread, so it's waiting for the music to finish fading out. So if we go into the arena tour mode, we load whatever arena we have selected, and then in this loop, so it's waiting to see for user input to see if we're going to change and move on to the next arena. Otherwise, it's just calling the animate arena function, which is so every single arena has its own specific function for loading the graphics associated with that arena. And then when you call animate, it's got the logic built in. So if there's like the flying bat things or whatever in the combat tomb, the shimmering water in the wasteland arena, or the bubbles in the acid arena, things like that get called during the animate function. In this case, it's not calling, there's no fighters on the screen, so it's just animating the arena, displaying the screen, waiting for input, and just doing that over and over and over again in a loop. So if it's not in the choose your arena mode, so it's going to be 1 player, 2 player, or casual, all 3 of them, you're required now to choose a fighter. This needs to be cleaned up a little bit, but this is the loop where it displays the screen where you choose the fighter, if you can. So in certain modes, like in 1-player mode, you're not allowed to choose a fighter. 2-player mode, you have to choose a fighter, and then in casual mode, you have the option to opt in if you're player 2. If you didn't pick a fighter, so fighter 1, press the stop button. We're going to back out, break out of this main loop, and start back over at the start menu screen again. Otherwise, if we have everything we need to move forward, now it goes to the choose arena screen if we're not in 1-player mode. If we are in 1-player mode, it automatically goes to the mountain. So right now, I don't have this baked in yet. So this is something that I still need to work on, and I still don't have Shao Kahn loaded yet. So that's still on the to-do list. But if we go into 2-player mode or casual, so 2-player mode right now is the special mode that I have for positioning. So where you can see the animation frames and states on the screen, you can toggle back and forth on those, and then it shows me the current positions of the fighters. Casual mode is the only mode that I have right now where it's actual gameplay against either another player or the computer. So we've made it to this point. We're going to load the arena. Actually, sorry, I should back up for a second. So it needs to unload the choose fighter assets. So this is 2 large cells. 1 cell is for all the different fighter animation stances, and then the other one is for the victory poses. So those are loaded as two separate graphic files. That gets unloaded first because we don't have a lot of memory that we're working with. It's, once the OS is booted up, we only have about 2.4 megs to work with total combined between the VRAM and the DRAM. So unload those fighters. Load the current arena, and arenas are generally less than 150 kilobytes. The loading screen is where it shows the two different fighters. So depending on the fighters that were picked, it shows the bio images, and then it needs to load the arena first also because it shows the name of the arena at the bottom. Plays the pre-fight sound effect, and while it's doing that, so I'm not going to get into why, but you have to the screen's double buffered, so I show the screen at least 2 times so that it draws the current screen. So just to make the workflow look nice, so we fade to black, do the unload, load the new assets, so the arena, then show the loading screens for who's going to be loaded, and then while it's showing the loading screen, we play the sample sound effect, that pre-fight sound effect. We load the new fighter assets, and these are a bit larger, so each fighter is around 400 to 450 kilobytes. So what I'm doing is loading the larger fighter into VRAM, and then the smaller fighter into DRAM. Even though the reason I'm doing that is because I know we have about 600K or 500, 600K of VRAM available depending on the size of the arena, which is also loaded into VRAM. So based on the size of the fighters, I know for sure that I'll have at least enough VRAM available to load both of those with not much left over. You can't use VRAM for audio samples or the audio spooling, so as far as I'm aware anyway. So everything else that's left over, we're using the DRAM for, and there's audio takes up way more than the graphics typically. So we do have the ability to compress the AIFF files that we're using, but they're still significantly larger in general than the graphics that we're using. So we'll see how much of the audio we'll be able to get in here. I don't think we're gonna have to cut too many corners, but we'll see. I still don't know that for sure yet. I'm thinking I'll probably have about 200K of audio per fighter when we get going, but we'll see. And then there's certain things we can do, like several of the fighters have shared sound effects, so we'll see. So anyways, after we've got the fighters loaded, we fade to black again, unload the screen that we were just showing, and then get into the fight mode loop. I've got an outer loop here, and the reason I have this is because within this loop nothing is unloaded in case the fight finishes and you want to do a quick rematch without going back to the choose your fighter, choose the arena screen. It can very quickly, because everything's still in memory, just restart the fight again. So fight's over, it goes back to that screen where the two stone things close, and asks if you want to continue. If you continue, it comes right back to this loop here. If you don't want to continue, it goes back to the choose your fighter loop. So we set up the fight, get the fighters into position, set up this animator thing here, which just kind of handles doing some of the basic animation for the initial fight, where it shows, so it handles playing round 1, 2, 3, that audio clip, and then fight. And while it's doing that, it kind of zooms in and then zooms out of the word fight, and then it changes it back and forth from red to yellow. So that all happens in here. If we do have a round timer, which in casual mode we have the option to not have one, it will animate that. In the arcade, it's every 3/4 of a second, I believe, is when it ticks down. I'm doing every 48 milliseconds, or not milliseconds. Sorry, to stop and tweak something real quick and then add a couple comments. I had these out of order. It doesn't really matter, honestly. It's just I wanted to put them in a more logical order. So in any case, this is the fight loop. So the main game happens in here. So basically, once the that beginning fight, so where it fills up the fighter's health, and then it says fight. Once it gets to a certain point, you can start moving again, so that's where handle input happens. And then if we're not paused, then this function here and this function here are really made up of several smaller functions, and they could all really be one giant one, but they're kind of logically separated because there's a lot going on in there. Basically with handle input, we collect the joypad input. Handle fighters movement, we decide what to do with the input that was pressed, and then animate fighters, this is where we handle all the logic for making the movements happen, and then having the two fighters interact with each other. What I still need to do is more of kind of like in the animation tables, I guess you would call them, or like the different states that would say this condition can happen only in these other conditions. You can't sweep a fighter if they're jumping, and you can't do this damage if this other fighter's in this other state. We need to have things like where you're vulnerable or you're not vulnerable depending on the state that you're in. Things like that. And then hitboxes. Right now I just have a very simplistic hitbox logic implemented, so hitboxes are another thing that I need to get implemented. None of this is really a big deal. It's just kind of tedious and a lot to get going. So getting there step by step, just a lot. And then animate arena. Just very simple. All it does is the arena kind of stands alone. Because there's other than a couple fatalities, there is no interaction with the backgrounds. So the arena just does its thing, and then its just position is offset based on where the fighters are on the screen. Same thing as the when we're in the arena tour mode, we just have fighters displaying over them. And then I have this slow down time thing, which is an option where if you press the L and R trigger at the same time, if I want to watch two animations to see how they look over each other, it's just kind of like a hack that I put in to see how it looks. Then I can record it and pause it, and it's easier to make sure everything's looking and moving like it's supposed to. So the fight loop ends when you either quit or the round is complete. So if we quit, we break out to the loop where it brings in the the continue screen, and then from there we can either do a rematch where just quick reloads, or it goes back to the choose your fighter screen. This is where if we need to wait on a finish him or a finish her, it will pause in this loop here and we'll handle that logic. And then after that happens, we display the fighter's name, whoever won. There's no input, so there's the function that says handle input doesn't get called in here, and then we still have to work on if it's flawless victory or fatality. It's got it plays the audio clip and it shows the different animations for those as well. And that's the end of this loop. So when it's finished, when we break out of this, it shows that continue loop, and this is where those two stone things come in and ask the user if they want to continue. If they want to rematch, then great, we turn fight mode back on, we go back to the beginning of the loop. Otherwise, we load everything and we break out. Fight mode is off, so it's going to break out and move on to the next loop and go back to the choose your fighter, and everything's been unloaded, so it's got to reload and start over again. Okay, so let's go to handle fighters movement. This. No, we don't want to be here. We want to be alright, so in animate fighter, so this is where it this is where we actually do the frame swapping. Animate damage is where the movement occurs and the damage happens based on the opposing fighter's input. Also Y adjustments happen here, so if there's a separate Y adjustment for things like an uppercut or a roundhouse kick, that happens in here. Animate movement is more where the X offset happens, and things like walking and jumping and things like that. Again, these could have all been in the same function. Maybe they will be at some point, but for now I broke them out just how I felt they were a little bit more logical. We animate the blood separately. The blood still has to get cleaned up and animated properly. Right now, all of the blood drip cells are animated as if they were triggered by an uppercut. So that's something else we need to get working properly. And then in here, so once it's called these other functions, it handles some other basic thing like drawing the health, because those are just solid rectangle green boxes that get shrunk. This is where we toggle back and forth. So if we're showing the danger indicator, if the fighter's health is less than or equal to 20, and it just toggles it back and forth, white and blue. Depending on the fighter, the way that 3DO handles the index, you chain all the cells together in order. So I draw fighter 1, then 2, or cell 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, in whatever order I draw those cells in. The first cell that's drawn is in the background, and then every other cell drawn after that, or linked to it through the CCB next pointer, gets drawn on top. So depending on the last fighter that made a movement, it's just toggling back and forth who's going to be in the front, who's going to be in the back. So that's what's happening here. The camera is moved to make sure that it lines up with the fighters, and then also things like if a fighter is off the ground, it moves up with the fighter, so it sets the BG target. And then all of these adjustments that it makes has to get passed into the animate arena, because everything in the background gets animated as well. So the BG target, or the BG offset Y, which eventually gets set here, and the BG offset X get passed into every animate arena function. And this is just where it handles positioning the fighters as well on the screen after all the other logic has taken place. So we're going to go into animate damage now, because I know that it's not working, or what I want to work is not working in here. Keep in mind a lot of what's in here needs to get cleaned up. A lot of these properties need to get stored probably in the fighter struct, so that it's not happening over and over every single time. It's just, again, this is still a work in progress. And then there's other logic that needs to go into here, like when we need to check to see if we need to apply damage. For example, we don't, so if a particular frame, so like an uppercut, frame 4 is the one that does the damage, we want to make sure, but then that frame is displayed for 4 fields because of the timing. We're making sure that it doesn't apply the damage every single time. This is how I've implemented it, is only if it's the very first time drawing that frame. But I might come back again and kind of tweak how a lot of these things work. So in any case, so in this function here, we're going to check to see if the jump kick. Actually, I could be wrong. Maybe this isn't where it happens. So this might be where we. So this is where we trigger the damage from the other fighter. So the attacking fighter in this case is FSA, so fighter state A. So if it's an uppercut and the fighter's not blocking, then we activate the damage type, tell it that's an uppercut, and then cue the animation state for falling back. So the fighter's going to do the fall back animation, or the fall back A animation. In addition to that animation playing, we have a separate Y offset that's going to happen at the same time. Any of these attacks where we're calling activate damage anim, that's what's happening to them, is they've got their separate Y offset, and then that animation doesn't finish until the fighter hits the ground. So that's what we need to dig into. So the first thing I want to see is when we call this function, so damage caused by, in this case, is an uppercut. So that's good. Let's go back again. So animate, so not animate damage, but animate fighter now. No, this is not what we want. Animate movement is where we want to go. So after animate damage, animate movement. Okay. See the same just doing the same things again. This all needs to be cleaned up and put into one spot. And this is the current collision detection. So throne we need to get back to also. Okay. So if the fighter is falling, so any of those attacks that I mentioned earlier, like a roundhouse kick, jump kick, uppercut, things like that, it sets this flag that says that the fighter is falling. So that's how we know that we also need to trigger, or we need to set the Y offset is going to be based off of a different table, and the table depends on the type of damage that's being done currently. So just real quick, I'll show you what that looks like. So if it's an uppercut, we use this table. One of these two, we use this table, and then these tables, just so you see what they look like. They're just hard-coded that show the Y offsets that we're going to make based on the current frame that we're at. Okay. Oops. Oh, sorry. All right. So if the fighter is falling, all right, first thing I want to do, what's going to happen is we're going to get into this loop right here, and it's not going to do anything for 4 fields. That's what I've set the delay for on the uppercut. So we need it to happen automatically if it's 0. So we'll increment the loop afterwards. So let's say, first of all, frame counter equals 0. So we'll come into the loop right away the first time, always. And then after the loop, then we'll reset the timer. Okay. So step 1, it's going to come into here. Fall delay exceeded. Okay, if the damage, blah blah blah. So this is where we move on to the next damage anim frame, and this is just used to call. It's going to be used for that index that I just showed you earlier, where we show what the offset is going to be based on this frame here. So for like an uppercut, for example, it's going to move up 20, then 16, then 14, then 12, then 8, or however I've got them set. So we get the fall offset based on the damage type. I just want to make actually I can see right here this is not right. We don't want to pass in the damage type, and this I think is why it actually wasn't working. We want to pass in damage caused by, because the fighter's not doing any damage right now. So damage caused by is what was triggered by the other fighter, where the other fighter had a damage type field set on their attack. So their damage type would have been an uppercut, which sets damage caused by to the opposing fighter. So I think that was my issue. So the Y offset is going to change. I should see now, so when we do this print to the console, the Y offset should be lower than it was after we set the value based on this here. So then what it does is it checks to see if the fighter's position is ever lower than the base position. So it's the fighter's position in any animation frame relative to where the floor is. If they ever get past that point, we're going to cap it, or we're going to say they can't go lower than their base Y. And then we're going to clear the current state that they're at. So we're going to reset everything. We're going to trigger the arena to shake. And then we're going to, as long as it's not the end of the fight, so say if the fighter lost all their health on that attack, they wouldn't get back up. That's why it's wrapped in round complete. So round complete would have been set based on the damage being set. Otherwise, we're going to cue the fall B frame, which starts on their back, and then they're going to kick back up. So theoretically, want to show the output also. So. You can't play more than 3 samples at a time. That's why I didn't say reptile. So that's one thing I'll tweak too, is I'll make sure that the fighters have a higher audio priority than the other sound effects, and then it'll force the that sound effect to play instead. Okay, so if what I did worked, when I do an uppercut, reptiles should get launched in the air. Okay, kind of worked. Let's see that one more time. So he's definitely going back like he's supposed to. It looks like he doesn't have enough time, and actually I think I know what the issue is. Let me pause that for 1 second. So I think what's happening, if we can go to the very, very first frame. Actually, you know what? Let me unpause this for a second. Go down to the bottom. I want to see what the very first and then the second Y offset is. He's also clearly moving way slower than he should be. Sorry, I know this is painful. All right. Let's see if I highlight this, if it'll stay. Nope. All right. I'm going to change the damage anim delay to 2. And I think that's the issue, and I'll go into why in a second. Still not what we're looking for, but it does look a little bit better. And then just out of curiosity, I make that 1. Fighting, if the damage and frame counter equals 0.
Outstanding. Fertile decay. Round 1. Fight.
I think I know what the problem is, and if it is, it's really annoying, and I think I'm a moron, but this is a leftover from some of the old code here. and it's literally right in front of me. So I think what's happening is it's automatically moving the fighter's Y position down because of the state that it's in. I'm fighting against myself basically. So let's make that go away. We'll start there. Because even if the timing is wrong, the uppercut animation should be right.
Outstanding. Round one. Fight.
Alright, let's see. Okay. Hey guys, so I'm kind of picking up where I left off the other day. So while I was working on this and trying to figure out why the Y offset animations were not working properly, like uppercuts, roundhouse kicks, jump kicks, things like that, or the player being damaged, I literally couldn't figure it out. My brain wasn't working, and come to find out, I actually have COVID. I tested positive yesterday, so having a little bit of brain fog right now, kind of a headache and sore throat, but I'm going to see if I can move through it a little bit. I got a pretty good night's sleep, and I'm not feeling too bad right now, so I actually went through, figured out what my problem was by looking at, comparing some old code, and I kind of cleaned up a couple things regarding how any of the damage types that apply a separate Y offset work. And one of the things I want to do now is go through and get all the throws and the body slams working. So from the player doing the attack, a throw and a body slam is the same type of thing, but the damage type applied is, I have it set up as a different damage type, which means that the other player has a different animation that plays when it happens, and then also the difference is if you're thrown, the damage isn't applied until after you're thrown and you hit the floor. That's when the damage is applied, where a body slam, when you get picked up and slammed to the ground, that's when the damage is applied. So with the body slam too, another thing is there's no separate Y offset that happens. It's timed to match the body slam animation of the fighter doing the body slam. So we'll go through now and I'll show you what was corrected. So over here, if we're looking at the so if the player is being thrown, and then on the way that I have this set up is I've got this new function that says activate damage anim, so basically starting the damage animation. So what that looks like is it just specifies basically so how many animation frames to call, and then when it actually performs the damage animation. So if we go back to, there's really not a lot of difference between these other than the number of animation frames that it needs to run through depending on the animation type. Let's see what this is called here. So falling is the flag that I'm using to know that the Y offset has been adjusted. And another reason that I have it set up this way, and it's called this, is because you can also be jumping and have any other attack, like a punch attack, for example, knock you back into a fall attack. So there's not a fixed number of Y offsets that needs to take place before you actually hit the floor. So basically what it does is it'll run through a fixed number of Y offsets, and then you'll just fall at a certain fixed amount until you hit the floor. So once every fighter has like a base Y offset that gets set, and that's kind of depending on the arena. If you are lower than that, then I know that you hit the floor. So at that point, we clear the damage animation, which tells the game that you need to go back into the fall B animation, was where you kick off from your back onto your feet, and then it also initiates the shake effect, which actually tweaked a little bit too. I watched the arcade a little bit to see exactly how they handle the shake animation. And what I was doing, I'll show you that real quick. So see, right now I have it set at 442200, 442200, right? 44. So it runs through 3 times, and it moves the arena, well, the whole arena down, right? So everything gets offset by 4. So it's not just the arena and everything that's part of the arena, but the fighters, the blood, anything else that might be visible as well. Originally I had it, if you think of it kind of like guitar vibrato, I had it 2420, and then I also tried it going up and down, so negative. So 0, 2, 0, negative 2, 0, 2, and try a few different variations of that. But it looks like what the arcade actually does is just a quick, sharp increase. So that's why I'm going up to 4 and then down, and then up to 4 and then down again. And I think this looks a little bit closer to what the arcade does. And this happens on major attacks, so like a roundhouse kick, jump kick, uppercut, things like that. And then again when you hit the floor. So I'll play with this a little bit more, but I think this looks pretty good. And it's really not that big of a deal. So here's where it gets set when after the animation is done. So it goes through, there's the different functions that handle, so Animate Fighter basically just handles the key presses, and it says, okay, here's what I want to do based on the key press. Animate Damage determines whether or not what you pressed, if it's a damage animation, how the other player is going to be affected by that. And then Animate Movement really just kind of handles the X offset left and right, and then the arena movement based on how the fighters moved left and right. So a few of these, I'm not sure if it's going to be Animate Fighter or probably Animate Fighter. I'll go through and see. But there's going to be a lot more logic that has to get implemented about when certain attacks are allowed to take place, and when there's certain, like, because there's going to be invincibility zones, and things like that. If I do an uppercut, am I allowed to like re-uppercut the player as they're falling down, and things like that in general are going to get taken care of. So in any case, what I was working on, I think when I started doing the video the other day, and what I got cleaned up. So if I go back to this thing here, so animating the damage animations. So what it's doing, and what I was not doing the other day, but what I should have been, is every single field draw. So there's 60 V blanks a second, and in 480i, you get 30 unique fields on draw A, and then 30 unique fields on draw B, and it kind of toggles back and forth. So every single screen refresh, every V blank, it's making this adjustment. So the Y offset is being adjusted based on the whether it's an uppercut or a roundhouse kick, the array that I showed before that has the different offsets, and then the offset amount just changes every other field basically. So for 2 fields it'll show, so it's just toggling back and forth between a 0 and a 1 over and over again, and then so every other field it switches on to the next offset. So if we go to I'll show you the uppercut one more time. I think that's what it's called now. Oops. Oh, where the heck is it? There we go. Yeah, so for 2 fields in a row, minus 20, then minus 18, then minus 14, and this gives it the, kind of the slow up and down effect. Okay. That's what I couldn't figure out the other day why I was being so goofy. I think I was waiting like multiple fields before I was performing the up-down animation, so it was not, the fighter wouldn't move nearly fast enough like they were supposed to. And again, I'm blaming COVID and my COVID brain fog right now for why I'm having a hard time figuring a lot of this stuff out. Okay, so alright, so throws are a little bit different in how it handles the this function here where it says activate damage anim, because this doesn't happen on the initial animation. It happens on the initial animation frame from the other fighter. So an uppercut or a roundhouse, as soon as the attack happens, it triggers this. Or a throw, it's going to go through a few different animation frames, and they're synchronized. So fighter A and fighter B's animation frames are synchronized before this gets called, and then so what this does again is it triggers a secondary animation where the Y offsets change, and then the damage is going to happen once the fighter hits the ground. So in activate damage anim, I'm setting whatever the damage amount is from the fighter's throw, and also that just the fact that this particular frame has a damage amount on it is the trigger I'm using to activate the Y offset being set on the fighter being thrown. So we're going to set, when that happens, this landing damage field, and then that gets actually applied when the fighter hits the ground. So here's where it applies the landing damage, and this gets called once the fighter's Y offset is greater than or equal to the base offset. So they've hit the floor. So they've gone through the Y offset animation and then hit the ground. And again, that's the fighter could be in the air, so there's not like a fixed amount that they need to go up and down. The amount that they go up is fixed, but the amount that they come down is basically until they hit the floor. So I'm going to show you what I'll use Liu Kang and Reptile right now and show you what the throw animation looks like. Alright, so I'm going to do it at full speed first. Okay. Notice that once Reptile hits a certain point, he doesn't keep going. I'll show you how I have the logic for the throws working as well. I'm going to press the L trigger and R trigger at the same time. That's going to slow down time a little bit. And that's just for debugging purposes. Okay. Do it one more time. And now I'm going to do a separate screen record. I assume it'll let me do a Windows record while it's using the OBS Studio record function, but we'll find out. Yep, seems to be. Alright, and I'm going to do that because then I can go back. Okay. Alright, I'm going to pull that video up now that I just grabbed. Because now we can pause it at exactly the frames. So on the left I've got player 1's current animation frame and then player 2's current animation frame. Alright. So that frame right there, that's exactly how the arcade does it, but I don't think that looks as good as how it would look if we change the frame 1 for the fighter that's being thrown. So every fighter has a knockback animation. I call it hit 3. So they've got hit 1, hit 2, and hit 3. The throw animation, the body slam animation, and then there's like a back break animation, the nut punch from Johnny Cage. So there's a few different types of like being hit animations. So I'm going to grab another animation frame and make that be frame 1 for when the fighter gets thrown. So right now across the board, all fighters have 4 animation frames for being thrown. So let's make this go away. I'm going to stop the emulator, and I'm going to go to Reptile and change. So there's a couple things we need to do to make this work. On the fighter struct itself, I need to make sure that we're allowed to have, so for the thrown animation, 5, the array size is 5, so there's 5 different frames allowed for the thrown animation. And I need to make sure that when the fighters are initialized, yep, because this, I used to have this at 4, so it's just initialized, and all this does is sets everything to zeros basically, because it's, you can have up to 5 or up to 4 or up to 6, whatever, depending on the animation. That's how this works. Oops. And I think that's it for here. Yep. All right, so I'm gonna have to rebuild the whole thing. And then, so back to Reptile. So where we load his animation frames, I think I talked about this before in the last video, but 3DO graphics, for 3DO uses quads for graphics called cells, and then the cells are wrapped in a struct called the CCB that contains more information about the cell. When I'm loading these graphics, all of the cells are part of one big concatenated file that has like 180 frames or whatever for the fighters, and that gets all loaded as once. So it goes through, and they're loaded in sequential order. So when I'm assigning the graphics, so the pointer to the graphic in every single one of the animation frames, it just goes through in order in loops based on the number of animation, based on the number of fields for that particular animation per fighter. So when I go to the throne animation now, rather than simply just going through and grabbing the first, it used to be 4 fields in a row, and at some point I'll go through and I can show you the script that I have where I grab all the individual graphics and I combine them into one graphic, and that's where it gets loaded from. I'm going to say the throne frame 1, I'm actually going to borrow from a different animation. And you'll see what that looks like in a minute. So 0 is going to be this one here. So it's going to literally point to the same graphic that hit 3 frame 0 uses. And then instead of starting at 0, it's just going to start at 1 here. So every other fighter I'm going to have to do the exact same thing. So I'm going to have to set the number of frames in the being thrown animation to 5 instead of 4. Excuse me. Grab field 1 from the hit 3 animation, and then start the loop where it loads the graphics for the throne animation at 1, because now it's going to be 1 through 5 instead of 0 through 4. Now I need to go back to where I'm adjusting the offsets. Oh, another thing too, I'm actually going to do the same thing here, make this be exactly the same. So for being body slammed and being thrown, frame 1 is going to, actually I don't even have to do that, because I'm grabbing the field that I want. I can make body slammed basically match thrown. Hold on. This is where my brain's not working. Alright, so 0, 1. Yeah, so this is going to be 0. Okay. So this is just going to be 1, be 2. This will be 3. And this will be 4 now. Now, the reason that Body Slam has twice as many animation frames up to this point as the Throne is because it allows for smoother animation up, down, and over. The throw animation doesn't really need to look like that. It looks, and with the arcade, actually, I think the Body Slam does the same thing as the throw does, where it's a one-to-one between the fighter doing the animation and the fighter that's being animated. But I think the Body Slam looks nicer, and you've got more flexibility when you have more animation frames like this. So I actually have 18 animation frames set up, so 0 through 17. It allows for smoother animation, and then you can set through a combination of the other fighter's timing and the fighter being Body Slam's timing, make it a little bit more violent, I think, than it looked in the arcade. So you kind of go up slower, but then get slammed down harder. So I'll go over that as well. So certain fighters, like Raiden and Jax, Melina, Katana, have body slams as opposed to throws. So in any case, alright, so back to how we made the adjustment on the throw animation, or the throne animation, so being thrown. So we'll save that, and now I have to go back up to, go backwards. Alright, so 0, 1, 2, and 3, these now need to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to insert frame 0. And this offset is, I'm just going to make it match exactly this one up here, because that's where I borrowed the graphic from. So hit 3's offset X, and then hit 3's offset Y, index 0. Okay. For the timing, every fighter has to have, it's going to be exactly the same, and it's going to match the opposing fighter. So that, because it's going to be a one-to-one with how the animation works. I'll show you, you'll see what I mean in a minute here. So I'm going to make every animation frame, we'll start with 4 and see what that looks like for a frame delay. So it's going to draw, again, 60 fields per second. So every animation frame is going to wait 4 field draws before moving on to the next animation frame. So 4 is a little bit fast, but I'm going to delay the first one. So 0, I'm going to delay it for 8. And again, I need to, so I'm going to start with Liu Kang. I'm going to make his first animation, where this is where he actually does the grab, is also going to be 8. So they're going to match exactly. And then frame 4, so this is where you're in the process of being thrown. I just made the delay be the, it's an unsigned int, or unsigned int 8. So just the max value, because the fighter stays in that state until they hit the ground. So there's a few different ways I can handle that. This is kind of a cheap way of doing it. So I'm thinking now, this is all set. I'm going to go to Liu Kang and make the matching changes. So all his throw frames, the delay is 4 already, so that's good. Now we need to make frame 1's delay, which is really, well, frame 0 here, is going to be 8 to match. So his grab and then the fighter leaning back, because it came from the different animation, are both going to have be delayed the exact same amount of time before the rest of the animation proceeds at 4. Now throw 5, this is where the damage needs to take place. So at throw field 5, that's where it's going to apply the damage, and this is the trigger, if you remember, that I'm using to tell the game that now you need to launch the player up into the air. So now it's going to start using the Y offsets, and it's going to set the landing damage amount here based on this. These offsets here determine the X offset amount that the other fighter moves when they are at this number. So these offsets are based on the other fighter's current animation frame that they're at, if that makes sense. I think maybe it's this fighter actually. Hold on one second, let me confirm that. So throw offset. Okay, so fighter A is the fighter being thrown, and then with fighter B, we usually trigger things on the very, very first frame. So frame 0 means, again, if there's like a delay of 2 or 8 or 12 or whatever, only the very first time it comes through is when the this triggering happens. So the opposing fighter, so the one doing the throw, so this is, again, my brain's not working, so I'm going to make myself some simple notes. Fighter being thrown, fighter doing the throw. Okay, so if this is A, then we're going to go the other fighter's offsets based on, okay, so it's actually based on the fighter doing the throw. It's their animation frame. Honestly, it really doesn't matter. I just want to make sure I know who it is so I do it right. So throw 5, this is the frame where Liu Kang is kind of like finished with the throw, and then I have him just kind of roll back forward again. So his frames 6 and 7, I just have him re-roll forward. In the arcade, it actually has him kick back off. So I might play with that a little bit. But what this is saying is, while he's in the throw 5, the other fighter is going to be offset by X every single field draw. I'm sorry, offset by 6 every single field draw, or until they hit the ground, at which point it stops doing that. So we'll see what this looks like. So we'll save that. So let me do this. 2, open. Clean just to be sure that everything is recompiled. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into game mode 2 and just show you what Reptile's current animation frame looks like on his being thrown, because frame 1 now is no longer going to be leaning forward. It's going to be like he's getting knocked back. So if I press the B button here, it starts and stops the animation. I'm pressing the right shift to just cycle through all the different animations. That's his throw, by the way. It's very, very similar to Liu Kang, Sub-Zero, Scorpion. Okay. This is his frame 1 now. Frame 1 used to look like this, so now it looks like that. So he's being grabbed for 8 field draws, and then it's going to go through with the rest of this animation. That's interesting. 0, 1, 2, 3. It's supposed to be 4. So something's not right. Let's back out, go back to Reptile one more time just to be sure. I thought I checked this, but so his oh no, I'm sorry, I must have looked at throw. Wait, yeah, his thrown needs to be 5, not 4. I don't know how I missed that. I thought I checked it. Again, COVID brain. Alright. This time it'll work. Wrong mode. You might have heard that little static too when he said superb. That's another thing I need to do, is go through some of the different audio samples and just make sure that the clipping is reduced a little bit using Audacity. Would have been faster to go the other way. All right, here we go. Oops. All right, frame 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's what it's supposed to do. So, and generally when I'm doing with all the fighters, I'll go through and make sure that this is exactly how it's supposed to be. But this frame here, the feet are kind of lined up with the stance 0 animation frame. That's what I'm using. It's just kind of like a pivot or comparison point. Here, the feet are still pretty much on the ground. I might want them to actually come down a little bit, just because you're still on the ground at this point. Like right there, they're still lined up. Here, I want them to be kind of like so that the waist is lined up, but you know, maybe I can line them with the feet again. The feet are still on the ground. Here in the air, and then again, it doesn't. I just need to figure out where it all looks right, and then make sure that everybody's lined up the same. But the main thing here is the fact that we've got this in there for the first animation frame. So I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to back out. Now I'll show you what it looks like when Liu Kang performs the throw. Alright, we'll do it in real time. Okay. Now I'll slow it down. Okay. One more time, then I'm going to record it. video clip. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I think it looks better than it looked like before when Reptile was leaning forward, where Liu Kang's arms were kind of going through. I'm like, maybe I can bring them a little bit closer together, but that's the effect I was going for. All right, so right here they're both at frame 1 now. Again, so far so good, I think. That looks good. All right, so right here, so for frame 3, Reptile needs to move back, it looks like probably about another 12 pixels. And also, I think at this point it would look better if Reptile was on top instead of Liu Kang being on top. So what I'm going to say is for frame 3, I'm going to swap the Z index, and I'm also going to move him back. So if I go to Liu Kang's throw, his throw offset for frame 3, actually let's make that 54. And then just for the next one, so here. All right, also, this looks kind of goofy. So where Reptile is right here in frame 4, he should be higher. I have him right on the ground, right, but that's not going to make sense because if they're being thrown and then launched into the air right there, that throw frame should be off the ground a little bit. So that's another thing that I'm going to do too. I could probably also trigger the throw starting at frame 4, but it doesn't really make sense to. It should, here's where the throw should start. Yeah, and you can see how it does happen and how now he's going up in the air, but he's not, there's no offset or X offset happening, so we need to look at why nothing's happening there either. So I'm going to toggle the Z index, move Reptile back a little bit, and then in frame 4 move him up a little bit, so probably, you know, set his Y offset maybe like 12 higher than he is currently. He's already going to be back like 14 pixels further because I'm adjusting the previous frame, and then we'll get the rest of the animation working, so the X offset. Alright, so let's stop this. Alright, I just made this change. For Reptile, I'm not even going to look at it, I'm just going to make the change. So I go back to the frames thrown. Alright, so his 4, right now his Y offset is 54. I'm just going to bring it back up to 40. It's not very scientific, but I'm sure it'll look fine, and I can always make tweaks after the fact. Alright, so now where the animation happens. So, alright, if it's frame 0, okay, so we need to change this logic. And why don't we do this? We'll say so again, this triggers the fighter being in a falling state. I can even say, well, we already know that the, actually no, so FS, oh, so if FF, I'm sorry, FSA is falling, SB dot, throw, I have to do the same goofy thing. I'll clean this up. Again, right now I'm just trying to get it working. Actually, this should just happen in here because it's happening already. Yeah, again, I'll clean this up at some point. This will work, but just to get it going right now like it's supposed to. And I also said, all right, if the animation frame is 0, we're going to adjust the Z index. So else FSA equals 3. Then the priority is going to be the fighter being thrown, which is fighter A. Alright, I think that was all the changes we talked about making. Yeah, so again, I don't like having this happen twice in a row. My brain's working a little bit better. I'll make it prettier.
Outstanding.
You notice sometimes it doesn't say reptile. That's because I have a set right now where it can only play 3 audio clips simultaneously.
Fight.
And I just haven't set the there's audio sample priorities. So if reptile had a higher priority than the gong sound that it plays when he gets selected, it would play that instead. So I just need to set his priority. In any case, all right, let's see what the throw looks like. There we go. That actually looks really good, I think. All right, so let me slow it down. Okay. And then I just want to do a quick screen record one more time, just so I can go through frame by frame and make sure every frame looks right. There we go. Okay, so let's pause that. Go back to the capture. Alright, frame 0 looks good. Frame 1, I think looks pretty good. 2, 3, he could probably actually come back more than that too. Quite a bit more actually. I mean, his shoulders should probably be over here, and he should probably actually be a little bit higher, maybe off the ground, so that it looks a little bit more natural. Yeah, here he should be back a little bit more, but if he's back more from frame 3, naturally he'll be back more for frame 4 also. And then so here's where the launch happens, and the launch I think looks pretty good. And notice as soon as he hits the ground, it triggers the fall B animation, which is being on your back and then kicking up. So you kick up, and then once you stand up, it detects that you're on the left side, and it'll switch them around. So I'm going to call that good enough for now, and I'm going to move on to a body slam animation. Come on. And, oh, actually, one thing I didn't even check is to make sure that the damage is applied when he hits the ground. No, it's not. It's applied when he does the throw, so we need that to not happen. It does happen when he hits the ground, but it happens when he performs the throw as well, and that's not supposed to happen. All right. So one more time. Okay. Yeah, so it applies it twice. So what we need to do is make sure that so the damage, where is it? It's getting the damage amount from damage here. All right, so if the damage type is throw, yeah, so it's taking the damage amount already. I need to basically say don't apply damage now, apply damage only when the fighter hits the ground. Again, just to get this working like it's supposed to, I'm going to put in a quick hack. Second. It's frame 0. So just for now, oh, it's FSB is the fighter taking the damage here. This is not how I want to do it. I'm just putting it in here for now just to get it working. Oh, I don't think no, I didn't. I compiled, but I didn't rebuild. Meanwhile, we're going to go into the body slam. No, so body slam, okay. So cue the body slam animation. And then with the body slam, same thing, the applied damage should not happen until the fighter hits the ground. But that should just work without me doing anything special, I'm thinking. So, slammed. Real quick, I'll show you what the body slam animation looks like. I'll use reptile again.
Round one. Fight.
So that's the body slam animation. So the timing is also partially controlled by the opposing fighter when this actually happens, as well as the X offset, but the Y offset is preset, and there's no separate Y offset for this animation. And this animation is actually cobbled together from other animations, or other animation frames. So, sorry, I had to blow my nose. All right, so it's back out, and I'm going to do Jacks against Reptile. I'll show you what that looks like. Oh, you know what? Oops. I forgot to make sure that we got the throw damage not happening until the fighter hits the ground. Which it was already, but it was also happening initially. Nope. Why does it think there's damage? Oh, you know what? Let's see. Hold on. I think we've got an order of operations problem here. Alright, if FSB, so this is the fighter who's being damaged, right? Yep. Damage amount equals 0. Let's make that go away. Alright, so the animation state is throw. Queue animation state. So the state's already been queued. So nothing should be happening here because it's not doing anything. Again, this is a hack. Whatever. There's a lot of hacks right now, so. I'm just trying to see that when the fighter gets thrown, it doesn't apply any damage when they get thrown, only when they hit the ground. What is happening? It can't be here. Let me just confirm. That's going to be calling it from another spot, I imagine. Ugh.
Round 1. Fight.
Alright, if we pull up the debugger, okay, nothing. So that's good, I guess. Alright, so it's not happening here. So somewhere else where it's calling apply damage. So when it gets cleared, so clear damage, this is the only other place where it calls apply damage. It's clear damage anim. So when the fighter hits the ground, yep. All right, I have a theory. It's gonna be really annoying if it's what it is. I think I'm setting the, so right here I'm setting the activating the damage animation, which again tweaks the Y offsets. And then I think what's happening is then the fighter is immediately having it unset because, is that right? No, it's not. That's not it. Because the Y offset is immediately changing. So it's not that. That's good. Yeah, so this is working like it's supposed to. So as far as setting the damage, what the heck is going on? We already confirmed here that it's not printing anything here, right? And then just to be sure, damage, if damage is 0, return. So it's got to be in here, right? Meanwhile, I want to make sure I'm not doing anything stupid like I have multiple animation frames for Liu Kang that set the damage amount or anything. No, so throw. No, it's only throw 5. Okay. Alright, so. So it's right when they get launched and then again when they land. One more time. Excuse me. Damage amount 10. Clear damage anim. Damage amount 10. Damn, what? Why is it not finding it? Okay. Oh, I thought I checked this. Damage, okay, so it says damage amount, 10. Line break 2 to make it clean. So, oh, you know what? It's because of this. The damage type is set on a frame-by-frame basis, and this is some leftover code from me being in the process of cleaning some things up. I bet that's what the problem was. The damage type was none, so it was actually bypassing everything, but if there's no damage and the damage type is none, there's no reason to even be in this function at all. Also, don't look at this. Holy cow, what is happening? Oh, I'm such an idiot. Holy cow. It's because the animation frame does have damage, but okay. I'm an idiot. No, can't do that either. But what I can do, because either one of these conditions could happen, but I need to say, and again, this is going to be kind of a hack, I'm going to do it just for now. If the animation frame damage equals 0, or actually, I don't even think I need this. I just think if the damage type is none, yeah. So the damage type, the animation frame damage is 0, so it could be 0, because on frame 0 of the throw, the frame damage is 0. The damage type is going to be throw, so it needs to come in here for that. If the animation frame damage is greater than, it doesn't matter, it doesn't do anything in here. If the damage type is none, there's no reason to be in here at all. Yeah. This goofy thing can go away. Alright. Let's see if the 5th time's the charm. Right, so the damage type is what triggers the type of damage animation being done to the other fighter. So that's really all I care about, because that's really all that's happening in here. There we go. Holy cow, that was painful. Alright, moving on to a fighter who does a body slam. So the good thing is once I have the throws kind of done, now I can just go through and reapply the same logic to every single other fighter and just real quick work. So I need to get one down right, and then the rest of them just kind of copy and paste. Same thing with the body slam. Well, body slams I have to tweak the animations on a frame by frame basis, but same thing. Once I get one done, most of the work's already done. All right, his body slam already looks pretty good, I think. And I'll slow it down so you can see what it looks like slow. Now what it's not doing is applying any damage. And you'll notice with the body slam, so unlike the throw, where it moves, it's like a one-to-one on the animation movement, so the animation frame and the movement between the thrower and the one being thrown. With the body slam, there's more body slam animations than there are with the throw animation, so it just gives it kind of a smoother look. Okay, so let's just figure out why the damage isn't being applied, and then I'm going to call it a night. Let's pause it for now. Alright, so let's go to Jax. And for his body slam, oops. Just want to see what frame it is where the damage should be applied. Oops. 6. So Jax is frame 6, it looks like, should be applying some damage. Sorry, I started sneezing, and I've got this really annoying thing where once I start sneezing, I can't stop for like 10 minutes. And then I started recording again and forgot that I started coding and fixing things, and I forgot that I wasn't recording. So Jax was having the same problem with the body slam where, well, the problem where when he was doing the body slam, it wasn't doing any damage. It was related to the fix that I put in earlier for Liu Kang, so I just had to make this quick tweak over here where the damage type is not equal to none, or if the other fighter, and the other fighter is not being body slammed, then return. Otherwise, so with Jackson, for example, his damage type, it will be none in that frame, but there will be a damage amount, so it needs to come in here and apply the damage anyway. Again, a lot of this is going to get cleaned up and tightened up, but this is how it's working for now. And this works fine for applying the damage. His body slam looks pretty good. I'll just show you real quick how that actually works, and then I'm going to wrap this up and go get some sleep. So I'll slow it down so you can see what the animation frame looks like. Again. Okay. And again, all of the frames for the body slam are, they're kind of cobbled together from animation frames from different animation states. So if I back out of this, I already showed you what Reptile's the being body slammed animation looks like. I'll show you Jax's body slam, and then in code where that's being handled. So it's a throw animation. It's just the damage type is different for the other fighter. So instead of being thrown, you're being body slammed. So frame 0. And what I do is, this frame is real quick. That's the one that I hold for a little bit longer, because when Reptile or the other fighter is being body slammed, they're leaning back while they're being grabbed like that. It looks a little bit more natural. And then every fighter who does a body slam has about the same animation type. That kind of like over the head rainbow type thing. Jax is a little bit taller than some of the other fighters, so like Katana and Melina are, I think they probably have the lowest because they do like the back bend kind of body slam things. So I kind of average out what the other fighters look like when they go up and down to be body slammed. Maybe at some point I could adjust the Y offsets as well by fighter, but I don't think that's really necessary. So now, as far as he actually does the slam, I kind of have it a little slower in the beginning and then a little faster in the front, and I think it gives it kind of a little bit more of a violent animation. And then when the fighter hits the ground, it does a ground shake effect as well. So I'll back out of this, and I'll show you in code where the body slam happens. So if we DT slam, All right, so when the fighter's being body slammed, so it uses the same. So the throw offsets again are these are the X offsets that come from the fighter who's doing the slam or the throw. So with Jax, so here's the offsets that happen based on the throw animation frame that he's at. I'm sorry, those are the delays. These are the offsets. It's not like a throw where there's much larger. Well, a couple different things. The throw, you get launched after you get thrown, but also because the throw, there's a one-to-one with every animation frame between the fighter doing the throw. There's a lot less frames of animation to have the offsets happen. So if you've got 5 frames in being thrown, you might be offset 20 and then 40, then another 40 or whatever. Where in the body slam animation, these frames, it calls the offsets every single time it does a field redraw. So it's a combination of the X offset times the number of animation frame delays that the actual X offset happens, if that makes sense. So here I've kind of decoupled a little bit the X offset to the actual animation, where again it happens once per field draw. So the offset per frame is the throw offset times the number of delays for that frame, if that makes sense. Though there is no Y offset adjustment, that's just based on the other fighter's body slam animation. And then back to the code where it handles this. So again, A1, X1, this is just arena offset, and then X1 is the fighter offset. Yeah, we'll talk about Kung Lao at some other point. He's got kind of a goofy, depending on where he is in the arena, can either do like a full front flip throw, or it just turns around and does like a body slam throw. And then this is just where I'm toggling the Z index depending on the animation frame, just because I think it looks a little bit more natural. So, and then in the other function, that's where it handles the applying the damage. So, again, apologies if I was kind of all over the place here. Again, I'm blaming COVID for my brain not working properly, but hopefully some of you think this is kind of interesting. So what I'm going to do now is go through and get the rest of the throws and body slams working and timed properly. And then I'm going to work on some more sound effects so that there's like actually in-game sound effects for some of the fighters. And then there's going to be quite a bit more of actually cleaning up a lot of this gameplay logic. Performance is actually really good, so that's not really a concern. I just want to make sure it's more readable, and it's easier to work with for me, or if anybody else ever uses this to work on their own fighting game for 3DO. And then what still has to happen, I haven't really done anything yet with, is fighter special moves. So we'll get there. Anyways, thanks everyone for watching. If you have any questions, or if you're interested in learning a little bit more, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to share more code or go into more detail. So have a good one.